At 62, I had come to accept my place in life. Recently retired from my teaching career, living in a quiet house on the town's outskirts, and filling my days with gardening and books. My husband had passed away 5 years earlier, and since then I found solace in my simple daily routines. However, nothing could have prepared me for the changes that would unfold. When my stepson Alex moved in with me at 22, Alex was fresh out of college, eager to start his career as a graphic designer in the city. He and his father, whom I married just 2 years before his passing, were close, but Alex and I hadn't had much opportunity to bond. When Alex called me a few months ago, it had been a while since we last spoke. "Hey, Mara," he said hesitantly, his voice carrying a note of unease. "I know this is sudden, but I need to ask you a favor." Before he could continue, I sensed what was coming. Alex was struggling to find his footing, between jobs in a highly competitive field and having trouble affording his rent. I told him he was welcome to stay with me until he found a stable job in his own place. The day he arrived, I spent the morning tidying up the guest room, ensuring everything was perfect. As the hours passed, I grew nervous, something I hadn't felt in years. I wondered what it would be like to have a young person living with me again, especially someone of Alex's age. When he finally pulled up in his old beat-up car, I went outside to greet him. He smiled at me, with the familiar grin I remembered from family gatherings, but he was no longer the awkward teenager I knew. Alex had grown into a tall, broad-shouldered young man with a newfound confidence. "Hey, Mara," he said, giving me a quick hug. "Welcome," I replied, feeling slightly out of my element. "I hope the drive wasn't too bad." "Nah, it was fine. Thanks for letting me stay here," he responded. The first few days were uneventful. Alex mostly stayed in his room or went out to look for jobs. I tried not to be intrusive, wanting to give him space. Yet having him around brought subtle changes to the house. I noticed small things. His smile from across the table or how he lingered in the kitchen, chatting with me longer than necessary. I couldn't deny that his presence was comforting. Then one night, a few weeks after his arrival, something unexpected occurred. I had gone to bed early and the house was quiet. Around midnight, I heard my bedroom door creak open, turning over half awake. I saw Alex standing in the doorway. "Alex," I mumbled. "Still groggy as everything, okay?" He stepped inside, his silhouette framed by the dim hallway light. Though his expression was hard to read, I sensed something was bothering him. I couldn't sleep," he admitted quietly. Walking toward my bed, sitting up, I rubbed my eyes. "Is something wrong?" I asked. He hesitated, then sat on the edge of the bed, causing the mattress to dip slightly under his weight. "I don't know," he finally said, sounding lost in that moment. Alex didn't seem like the capable, self-assured young man I knew. He appeared vulnerable without thinking. I reached out and placed my hand on his arm, offering comfort. "You're going to be okay," I whispered. "It's just a rough patch, everyone goes through this." He looked at me, his eyes searching mine. And for a brief moment, the air between us felt heavy and charged. I should have pulled away, said something to diffuse the tension, but I didn't move. My hand remained on his arm. "Thanks, Mara," he said softly, his voice barely audible. I nodded, unsure of what to say next. Alex stood up slowly, his gaze lingering on me a moment longer, before he returned to his room. As the door clicked shut, I lay back down, my heart racing. I wasn't sure what to make of the moment we just shared. Was it my imagination, or had something shifted between us? The next morning, Alex acted as if nothing had happened, chatting casually with me over breakfast about his job hunt and plans for the weekend. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. I tried to dismiss it, convincing myself that I was just lonely and misinterpreting the situation. Yet as days passed, I couldn't ignore the subtle signs. The way his hand brushed mine when we crossed paths in the hallway, or how he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. It was faint but undeniable, leaving me wondering where this unspoken connection might lead. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our shared experience settling in the quiet room. My mind was racing, trying to process the boundaries I had just crossed, ones I never imagined nearing, but there was no turning back now. Alex remained close, his hand resting gently on my waist, and I leaned into him, feeling an uneasy mix of comfort and guilt. "What now?" I whispered, more to myself than to him. Alex didn't respond immediately. Instead, he shifted, facing me fully, his eyes serious and intent. "We take it one step at a time," he said softly. "I don't want to rush anything. I just ... I care about you, Mara. More than I probably should." His honesty struck me deeply. It felt surreal to hear these words from someone so much younger. someone who was meant to be part of my past. Not my future yet. There it was, an undeniable bond we both felt but didn't know how to navigate. I care about you too. I finally admitted the truth hanging in the air between us. I admitted, my voice trembling slightly. But this is complicated, Alex. So much more than either of us might realize. I know, he replied softly. I understand, but we don't have to figure everything out right away. We can just take it slow. I nodded, trying to make sense of everything. My rational mind was screaming at me to stop, to set clear boundaries and push him away. But another part of me, the part buried under years of loneliness and heartache, whispered something different. It was telling me that maybe, just maybe, I deserve to feel again. Even if it was unconventional and messy. In the days that followed, things between us felt different. We didn't talk about the kiss, but there was an unspoken shift, a quiet understanding between us. It felt as though we had entered into a silent agreement, carefully navigating around this new fragile balance we had created. One evening, about a week later, Alex came home from a job interview with a grin on his face. I think it went well, he said, dropping his bag by the door. They seemed interested. I'll know by the end of the week. That's great, I replied, genuinely happy for him. We spent the evening in the living room, talking and laughing, settling into an easy rhythm. That felt more natural than I had anticipated. As the night went on, I found myself watching him closely, noticing the small details. His laugh, the way he ruffled his hair absent-mindedly, the warmth in his eyes when he looked at me. It was a strange feeling, this pull toward him, but it also felt oddly right. Later, as I was heading upstairs to bed, Alex called out, Mara. I stopped on the stairs and turned to look at him. He stood at the bottom, hands in his pockets, looking uncertain. Yeah. I asked, my heart pounding. I wanted to thank you for everything, he said softly. You've been there for me in ways I didn't expect, and I don't want to mess things up between us. I smiled gently, though I felt a knot tightening in my chest. You're not messing anything up, Alex. We're both just figuring things out. He nodded, his eyes meeting mine. Good night, Mara. Good night, Alex? As I lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop thinking about how much it changed so quickly. The house felt different with Alex in it. More alive, more complicated, but also more fulfilling. Weeks passed and we continued to dance around this delicate balance. There were moments when the tension between us would rise, when our hands would touch or we'd sit a little too close on the couch. But we never spoke about it. We both understood something had changed, but neither of us was ready to take that next step. One evening after Alex had officially landed his job, we decided to celebrate. We ordered takeout, opened a bottle of wine, and spent the night talking about his future, his plans, and his excitement for what lay ahead. But as the evening wore on and the wine loosened our reservations, the conversation shifted to us, to that night in the kitchen, and to the kiss. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. Alex confessed, his voice low and his eyes locked onto mine. About you, I swallowed hard, feeling the familiar tightness in my chest. Neither have I whispered. He reached out, taking my hand in his thumb gently brushing against my skin. I know this is complicated, he said softly, but I don't care. I just want to be with you. My heart raced and my mind urged me to stop, to think about the potential fallout. But in that moment, all I could focus on was him, how he made me feel alive again, how our connection defied reason. I want that too. I finally admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. And with those words, the last of my resistance crumbled. We leaned into each other, our lips meeting in a kiss, filled with all the longing and desire we'd been holding back for so long. This time there was no hesitation, no pulling away that night. Everything between us changed. We crossed a line we knew couldn't be uncrossed, but neither of us wanted to. It was messy, complicated, and completely unexpected. But it was real, and in that moment, that was all that mattered. As we lay together, the weight of the world temporarily lifted. I realized that life doesn't always follow the rules. Sometimes it throws you into situations you never imagined, with people you never expected. And sometimes you have to let yourself feel, even if it's complicated, even if it's not what you thought your life would be. Because in the end, life is short. And maybe, just maybe, happiness doesn't always come in the way you think it will.